So, as I was saying, this may not look like much, but this is the fruits of all of my kind of banging my head against my iPad, trying to figure out the best way to teach por and para. So here's the thing about por and para. They both are often translated as for, and that causes all kinds of problems for people because there isn't really like one great rule. There aren't even a couple of great rules, like with ser and a star. With ser and a star, I can say, is it identity or time? Then it's ser. If it's condition or location, then it's a star, and that's pretty much all you need to know. Then you just kind of get your brain around when you come across the verb to be. Then you say, well, I'm talking about identity or time or condition or location. Those are really kind of the options that we have. With por and para, it's different because it can mean, as you can see here, a lot of different things. And I think that the best way to get your brain around por and para is, and you may or may not like that I'm going to say this, but you're going to have to do some memorizing. So I would like to see somebody put together like a Quizlet stack that's just por and para. It won't be a ton of cards. I'm guessing probably 20 or 30 cards. But I think that that's easier than me explaining like 30 different rules for when you use this versus this. Okay, here's my one rule that may have some sub-rules. But I think that the biggest thing to know to get your brain around por and para is that if you ever come across the word for, then you have to think if there's another way that you could say that for. Okay? Because for is not going to help you. All right? So I've got this thing here. And these kind of, sort of line up, sort of, as best I could. All right? Por means because of. Para means for the purpose of, in order to, or in spite of. So let me show you an example of that. Like how in my brain this works. Right, and of course it's, so because of. So I could say something like, he is big for his age. Okay, so if I say he is big for his age, okay, then I could say él es grande. If I say por su edad, then what does it mean? It means he's big because of his age.
So it'd be para because in spite of his age.
Okay.
In spite of his age.
If I want to say he is big in spite of his age, then I would say para. Like he's big for his age. That's how we would normally translate this thing, right? In Spanish, you could say both. But if you say por, you're saying he is big because of his age. Like, he's 12 and he's with a bunch of 8-year-olds, es grande por su edad, because of his age. But if, like my son, he's like a little tiny little guy. He looks like a tiny baby in the nursery, with all these other 18-month-old kids. He just looks like a teeny tiny baby. I would say, él es pequeño para su edad. He is small in spite of his age. He's 18 months old, but he looks like he's, a year old tops. He's just a runt. Okay? So, on the flashcards, I would write, on one side, I would write because of. And on the other side, I would write por. And then when I come across a sentence and I see the word for, and the question pops into my mind, por or para? And I would ask myself, well, could I switch out that for, because of, for the purpose of, in order to, or in spite of, and then depending on what you can fit into that little block, that's how you're going to do it. It'll come back. Okay? And we'll have lots of time to like look at examples of these things. But if I'm going to say like I'm going, here, it'll come to me. Okay, when you're talking about math and you're going to say times, like 3 times 5, you say por. This is how it's translated. Why? I don't know. There's got to be some like underlying reason, but I think that it's not worth our time to even think about it at this point. Just know that when you say times, like 3 times 5, that's por, all right? If you're going to say in exchange for, you're going to use por. For example, I give you $3 for a candy. Okay? I'll say te doy $3 por, in exchange for un dulce.
Oh.
Okay?
Then what's for and then recipient?
Recipient, that means tengo un dulce para Juan. He's the recipient. This is for him. Para. Okay?
Okay.
How about on behalf of? On behalf of means somebody. So let's say if I say this, compro un regalo para Sally. Okay? Compro un regalo para Sally. What does that mean? I buy a gift
For Sally.
for Sally. She's the recipient. Okay? What if I say compro un regalo por Sally?
Because of Sally.
You bought it in her stead, maybe?
On behalf of her means that she was not able to go to the store, right? And so I went on behalf of her and I bought this present for her to give to somebody else. Yes?
Is this all of them? Because I'm making cards right now.
This is as many as you need for now. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's pretty comprehensive. Okay? In favor of is like if you're voting for something. Okay?
You're voting for.
Right? I'm voting for. Yo voto por el presidente Obama.
Okay.
Right? I vote in favor of.
Okay.
Okay?
This is making so much sense to me.
Is this helping?
Yeah.
I know that it's like a ton of stuff, but really I think that we try to shortcut por and para, and I think that in the end it doesn't help. Okay? So now these ones right here all have to do, these all have to do with location. Okay? So we can say through, along, by, or in the area of, all are going to be translated as por. So I can say, yo viajo por Cedar City. Okay? This means I go through Cedar City. I can also say, yo viajo por la I-15. I travel along I-15. Or if I say viajo por Cedar City, like I drive by Cedar City. So it means through, it means by, it means along. All of those things.
Okay.
And you just know by context which one you're talking about. Okay? If I say voy para, and then a place like
You're going.
Cedar.
So
okay.
I'm going to see.
I'm going to Cedar. Okay? So if you see this, yo viajo para, then you know that you're talking about location, then you would translate it as like to go to, that's the destination.
Okay, so people who are native speakers, do they think about this?
No.
Like, is that something
No,
they learn?
it just comes totally naturally.
So how do we know, like that's how it's used?
You just
Because we see it. Yeah, you just see it. It's sort of like pronouns in English are also not the easiest things in the world. Or prepositions in English are not the easiest things in the world. Like, why do we say I have everything under control, but then we also sometimes say I am in control?
Or like shut up. Why do you say shut up? That's nice.
Yeah. There's lots of stuff that we say that doesn't make a ton of sense. This is as good as I've been able to come to try to kind of make some sense of this thing. And I think that the way to do it is you see the word por and para, and then you go, okay, I'm talking about this kind of a context. It translates as this thing. Or the flip side, I want to say for, I can't say for, I have to find some other way to say it. Okay? So viajo para cedar. So you could say something like, viajo por Beaver cuando voy para Salt Lake. Right? I travel through Beaver when I go to Salt Lake. Okay?
I'm really glad like you're explaining this because I feel like if I heard someone say that in real life, I'd be like, this sentence doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay, so we did that. No, I messed up my own thing. Okay, then the next sort of area that we talk about is time. And that would be these ones here, okay? So if I say that I'm doing something por a certain amount of time, it means for the period of time of or during. So I could say, estudio por 15 minutos. I study for 15 minutes. Okay? If you can see the whole period of time, then you're going to say por. To me, these both kind of mean the same thing, but it's also the reason why we say por la mañana, because it means during the morning time. So por la mañana yo desayuno, hago ejercicios y estudio para mis clases. During the morning time, that's what I do, during, por. Okay? We use para to talk about deadlines. So I say, esta tarea la necesito para mañana. I need it by tomorrow. So we could say before, we could also say by. But we have another translation for by. Somewhere here. Okay?
But that's something we've done next time.
But that's in the location if you're talking about this thing is by this other thing. Here we're talking about I need it by. So but rather than saying by, I just put before to not be confused. I need it before tomorrow. Lo necesito para mañana. I need it for the end of the month. Lo necesito para el final del mes. Okay? And then, here's the other by right here. Okay, so often por is used to say, you'll see a book. I don't know, like Tom Sawyer. Por Mark Twain. This por means by. It was written by him. Okay?
Okay.
And we'll use it when we use passive constructions a lot in Spanish, and that by, that por means by. It means like the person, something was done by somebody else. Por. Okay? Then you have these phrases that get used. And the phrases are estar por plus the infinitive. Means to be, yet to be. Okay? Which means, okay, so let's say estoy, let's see. How do I say? El partido está por empezar. Okay? The game is yet to be started. Right? It's about to would be maybe another way to say this. No, it's not exactly the same thing. It's the difference between this and this is really, really subtle. I think that most people probably don't even think about the difference But there is a slight difference. This means that something is yet to be happening. This means that something is about to happen. Okay? There's no, like on a test, nobody would be like, oh, you said estar por instead of estar para. It's like a potato, you know? They mean almost essentially the same thing. So you could use either in almost any situation. You would be understood fine. Okay, and then we have tener por would be to take and for. And the only time I can ever think of this is when it's like me toma por loco. Like he takes me for a crazy person. Okay. When are you ever going to say that? I don't know. But it's another use of por. It means for, like in the place of, right? And you'll sort of see as you start to use these that like this por is really means, you know, like the por that we talked about at the very beginning, because or in the place of, like exchange. Like he takes me for a crazy person, he's exchanging me for a crazy person, right? Yeah. And then this last one, you can say ir, venir, pasar, mandar, volver, preguntar. Por means either to get or to pick up. So if I say voy por ti, I'm going to go pick you up. Or I say paso por leche, like I'm going to go to the store to get milk, something like that. Yes?
For that por loco one,
Yes.
how did you conjugate tener right there? I can't see that.
It says, oh, that was toma. It would be, so I guess this would be like tener or tomar, sorry.
Oh, okay.
So you could say me toma por loco, or you could say me tiene por loco. Either way, me tiene por loco. And then there are a bunch of just idiomatic expressions like por ejemplo, right? Por ejemplo means for example. There's a big list of those. If you, Andrew, if you're making the list, if you Google por versus para, the very first one has a big list of all of those idiomatic expressions like por ejemplo, por casualidad. You could add those to the stack if you wanted. Okay? Other questions about this? I wish that there were an easier way. It's like, is there no other way? There is no other way to do this. You just have to memorize these things, and I think that like flashcards and Quizlet and just going through in your head, it will start to make sense. All right?